Okay, wanted to talk a little bit more about alpaca wool as opposed to sheep's wool, which merino wool's also sheep's wool. It's just a finer quality, smaller fiber diameter. So the best merino wool is like 14 microns, and then the bad stuff is above 25, I guess, 25 microns. Alpaca wool, especially baby alpaca, and which is not actually baby, but baby or royal alpaca comes from the back of the adult animal, like above its, where its shoulders are on its four legs, and then over the back. That's the best part of the wool. And so they call it royal alpaca or baby alpaca anyways, so when they shear the animal. But this is actually felted. I did another video, which I'll try to link on in the video or at the bottom in the description, of knitted alpaca as a mid layer. It's a superior fiber to other types of wools because it is warmer. It's warmer. It's a second only to polar bear, supposedly. It's lighter. It is 1/3 the weight of wool. It evacuates moisture much better than wool because it holds less moisture, so it evaporates through it. It only holds about 10% of its weight instead of 30% of its weight in water or water vapor, as the case may be. It's stronger, supposedly. I can't prove that, but it's said that it's actually more durable than lamb's wool. It is definitely hypoallergenic, which is a big deal for some people because there's no lanolin oil in alpaca, which makes it much less likely to trigger allergies. And then it also, the other thing that causes a reaction with people is the scales in the wool. That's what makes it feel prickly. And the scales in alpaca are much less. They're much, so it's much smoother, the fiber. So it feels soft like cashmere, much softer or much closer to something like fleece than wool ever does. I mean, really good 14 micron merino wool feels about the same, but that's exactly why the high altitude alpaca is really good. They have very small 14 micron to 19 micron fibers in there, so they are not prickly like wool, so they feel really soft. And then it's also extremely good for not retaining odors or dirt or stains. So the odors is the big deal because it doesn't get stinky when you wear it for day after day after day. So unlike all sorts of synthetic fibers, they all get really stinky. So, and then of course it comes in like a bunch of natural colors, like 22-ish, grays and browns and black and light whites or beige. So this is actually felted alpaca, which is the felting process. They lay down tufts of the actual fiber. They pull it apart, lay it down in one direction and then the other direction. And then they do several layers, like 4 probably minimum, and maybe 10. I don't even know. This probably has quite a few because this is pretty thick. And then they basically massage it together if you do it by hand. And the fibers get with soap to cut down on the friction between the fibers. And it just entangles with itself and ends up being a felt. And you can make that finer, or there's machines that do it and they entwine it, and they keep doing like plywood. They do the fiber grain going one direction, then another, and maybe diagonally, maybe circles or whatever. And it all ties together and becomes a felt. And you make them fine, you can make them rough. This one's a medium felt, but it's very heavy. This is a really thick felt, which means it's extremely warm. And that makes it a really good fiber for outer layers. And it's extremely good for breathability. So the two big points of this for an outer layer is if you're somebody that sweats a lot, like me, and you really have trouble wearing, hard shells at all, which I do. I only really ever wear them if it's windy or raining. And in the rain, I get uncomfortable in them because they trap too much moisture. So I usually condense on the inside, even with Gore-Tex, which is the best that I've found is the modern Gore-Tex Pro. But it's still, if I'm doing something really strenuous, it doesn't work for me. I need to get out of the hard shell and wear something like this. Now, this is not great for wind blocking, but it's a lot better than woven alpaca or woven lamb's wool. It does block a fair amount of wind, and being a heavy, not weight heavy, but heavy felt, it does a pretty good job of keeping the wind out, and it keeps breathing like crazy. It literally, when you're wearing this and exercising outside in cold temperatures, and you'll definitely notice when it's freezing, it'll actually get little teeny beads on the outside that freeze, moisture coming through it. On the outside, it's frozen. On the inside, it's cozy and warm, which is really a godsend for somebody like me that sweats a lot. But I'm usually, when I'm outside, I'm being active. I'm hiking, I'm doing or working or whatever. And so it's really good for that. And then if it's snowing, you don't really need to worry about the water seeping into it. It'll just land on you and stay frozen on the outside if you're wearing a heavy felted alpaca like this. And so it's very, very warm. And then if you start getting cold, you just put a hard shell on to warm up. So you would just want a really light hard shell if you're going to wear something this heavy of a felt, which means it's many layers. And then you take that off. So something you could probably wrap around your waist. Or if it's raining, I mean, you'd probably be better off wearing a poncho over this, because then you really get the breathability. And then you can also if you're wearing a backpack, you can get a poncho that will go over your entire pack. They sell those. And look for nylon, because nylon's the most rugged, but polyester's fine too. It might not, if you use it all the time, nylon will probably last longer. But it doesn't breathe at all, so you want to make sure that if you're going to wear a jacket or a hard shell, that you get something that has some breathability, like Gore-Tex Pro. Anyways, some people just wear really light, like TPU, like plastic jackets when it's actually raining. But if you wear something like that, you're going to have major condensation on the inside. But with wool, you at least will keep the moisture. You will still feel relatively dry, unlike other types of underlayers. But this is a really good at evacuating moisture and keeping you warm anyways. That's the great thing, is people compare this with wools in general with down, and down just loses all of its insulating properties when it gets wet, whereas alpaca especially keeps you warm even when it gets wet. It immediately, most of the moisture just flows out of it, and then what's left, it stays in the fabric, but it will still keep you warm, unlike wool, or unlike down. So that feature of alpaca is extremely good one for outdoor use. And this would be a heavy mid layer or an outer layer. That's what you would use this for. Now, this is something that you would probably need to take off if you go indoors or it gets warmer. And they are relatively bulky. It's not an unbulky item, but it is relatively light. It's 1/3 the weight of wool, so it is a lot lighter than wool. So you'll wish you brought this if it gets cold, even though it's bulky. So if you're backpacking, it may not be the greatest, because it just takes up too much space, unless you want to just strap that to the bottom of your pack, or put it in a plastic bag and strap it to the bottom of your pack. So you always have your cozy, blanket jacket basically. And this doesn't have it says Colecciones to me. Cusco is in Peru. So that's the brand, and it's 100% baby alpaca, which means it's that finer fiber as far as the brand goes. And some of these are sold in the US, some of them aren't. So you just have to search for that, search for 100% alpaca, or at least 75%. That's the real key with alpaca, is getting at least 75% so you don't lose the properties of the fabric. Here's a vest that's a little bit lighter felt, but this is excellent in milder climates. And this is Ulicon, looks like. And this one has 28%, 72% baby alpaca and 28% wool, which says baby alpaca. So it might be wool. It might actually be just baby alpaca. It's very soft. This feels like cashmere. The last one is not quite as soft as this, so I really love this vest, and it is, I'll just show you that brand just so you can look it up if you want. I'm not sure where to buy it new, but you can find several companies that sell imported alpaca. It's where, I don't know if the garments are made here or just the alpaca wool is imported. But the best alpaca comes from high altitude, which means Peru in this case for the most part, and then maybe Bolivia too. But those are high altitude environments, and they're really good for alpaca because the alpacas grow finer fibers when they're at high altitude, and they're smaller, so they're more dense. So they're warmer. They're actually better fibers if you actually get the alpaca wool from high altitude, ranchers. So that's kind of the basics on felted alpaca, and of course I highly recommend it because it's going to last lifetime if you take care of it, and keep you nice and warm and cozy. As long as you have a way to keep the water off of it. I mean, some people that are hikers actually use umbrellas because you then can keep your breathability and keep the water off of you. And they make hiking umbrellas now, which you can find online. And it's a great choice. That's a great choice for somebody like me that sweats a lot. So if I'm hiking, especially uphill, I can't really wear a hard shell. It's too much for me. It totally condenses on the inside, then I get damp. Whereas with my alpaca, it just keeps evacuating moisture, so I'm fine. So try it, and if you can't find alpaca, I mean, merino wool works too, and it's just not quite as high of a performance as alpaca, or not even really that close. Alpaca far exceeds the performance of lamb's wool, but also kind of expensive and hard to find. I came across most of my alpaca garments by just buying them used. You just have to keep your eyes open. So I'm clearly really sold on the fiber itself, and will continue to talk about it and bring up other advantages of it as they occur to me and I have time to make a video about it. But good luck out there finding good outdoor gear, and hopefully you will like it as much as I do if you find it. Just keep those percentages as high as possible. You definitely want it to be 75% or more alpaca, and hopefully baby alpaca or royal alpaca, because that's the finer fibers. So hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Please like the video and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'd appreciate it. Bye-bye.